Welcome to the Bendigo Amateur Radio and Electronics Club. In that case, without further ado, I will hand over to Phil, VK3BHR, for your presence from the sky.
Well, thanks everyone for coming along. I hope my silly passion might be of some vague interest to you. It's not a recent thing, chasing weather balloons. I could say that's a bit loud, unusual for me. Apart from bad eyesight, I've got bad memory. First one, 1967, I recovered my first radio sonde out in the bush near Heathcote. My dad told me about it, so that's why I said I recovered it, not found it. And I don't know how he knew it was there, but he drew me a mud map and sent me off on my old single-speed bicycle with some water and a sandwich, and I came back with a prize. And I've been nutty ever since. Over the next few years, I was given a couple of other radio sondes that people had found because where I lived out in Heathcote, I was well known as the electronics nut. And I haven't improved since. Now, when Graham sent out the publicity for this session, it attracted the attention of one Mark Jessup, VK5QI, who is a really mad keen radio sonde chaser and done a lot of work supporting the IT that I'll be talking about later when it comes to actually finding the darn things. So that's why he gets a credit. He sent me an email saying, if you want any help, here's all my stuff. Use what you want. So I've stolen a few bits. So he gets the credit first. Save me remembering later to say, oh, this one's from Mark. Okay. A couple of times a day, the Weather Bureau launch a little prize from Melbourne Airport. They call it a weather balloon. I prefer to think of it as a microprocessor development system that you have to go and find in the bush. The instrument package, commonly called a radio sonde or sonde, measures temperature and humidity. There are some versions that have a air pressure sensor in them, and very occasionally, and this is the big prize, one that measures ozone concentration. They only launch one of those a week because they're worth a couple of $1,000s, and they'd like those ones back, thank you. But as far as radio hams are concerned, the interesting things that are there in every one are rather nifty little GPS receiver, a transmitter that can be put onto the 432 meg ham band, and a microprocessor that you can reprogram. And you can use them for a couple of common ham activities. Tracking beacons, APRS, and you can also set them up to operate as fox hunt beacons. But you read all that, so there was no need for me to repeat it. That's what a launch looked like about 2009, I think. A weather observer filled the balloon with hydrogen. We don't use helium in Australia, it's too flaming expensive. Hydrogen works perfectly well. Took the thing outside and let it go. You'll notice underneath there's a funny looking shiny thing. That's a radar reflector. And you can barely see under, I think held in his right hand, there's a little polystyrene package, which is the thing that we want. And there's some string, perhaps a bit more on the string later. Weather observers cost money, so they sacked all them and put in automatic launchers that apparently can handle a week or two's worth of radio songs and fill them up and let them go automatically. They start off at ground level, about 1 metre diameter or a little bit bigger, latex rubber balloon, and if they put enough gas in them, they start going up, typically a couple of metres a second, and they keep going up and up and up and up, till somewhere past 20 kilometres up, they go bang and start coming down again. Very occasionally, one of them will make it back to the ground without having gone bang, and the Weather Bureau's instructions in that case are call the fire brigade, don't go near it, because it's got hydrogen in it, a little spark might set it off, and who knows what will happen. I had thought of preparing a little demonstration, but decided that our public liability insurance probably didn't cover setting off a hydrogen balloon inside the hall. So, scotch that one. There's a list of a map of launch locations. Most capital cities and major airports and interesting places out in the bush. And typically the capital city ones will set off a couple of radio songs a day. The timing, they're usually timed to be at maximum altitude around about 0 hours UTC and midday UTC. So this works out to be a launch time of about 9:15 in the morning during winter, which is a very civilised time to plead with the station manager to be allowed to go out and chase, basically to go on a wild goose chase. So 9:15, the nighttime launch, 9:15 p.m, that's a little bit inconvenient. I don't know why they did that. It's most inconsiderate of the Weather Bureau. Okay, this is the landing spots for all of the radio songs that were launched from Melbourne Airport for last year. Now, the guys in Melbourne have got a smorgasbord to chase. You might notice none of them came near Bendigo last year. Luckily, this year, one of them did come close to Bendigo, and that's the reason why I'm doing this talk, because I made it known last year that I was vaguely interested in chasing these things, but said, I won't do a talk until I've actually got one. And around about January this year, one landed out the other side of Axdale. 30 kilometres line of sight, roughly, from home. By the end of a day's fun, I'd clocked up well over 100 kilometres. So that's why I don't go chasing any further afield. It's just too much running around. And I'll keep a little secret until the end. There is another little prize involved in this that makes you think, well, why the hell did I chase radio balloons? I've got this other toy as a side effect, and it's much more fun to play with. But I'll leave that to last. Well, you know where Melbourne Airport is. The important thing on this slide is the web address of the tracking site, sondhub.org. And this is the thing that Mark Jessup is very seriously involved in. Been involved with the website construction and also quite a bit with the prediction software, which is important because it allows you to figure out when it is that you really want to go and chase these things. How do they get their data? Well, mad people like me have a receiving station at home. I don't yet. You'll see there's no dots up near Bendigo, but down around Melbourne there's a few guys that, I think it's all blokes, they're the only ones silly enough to do this, have a little receiving station that connects to the Sondhub server, and whenever it hears, the receiving station hears a balloon, it pumps off a little message, and the website puts a pretty picture of a balloon up on the screen. And then you can get all excited about it and sit there all morning looking at where it's going until you decide, well, nah, too far to drive. But then one day, perhaps 1 or 2 days a year, you get really excited and actually leave the house. The other thing this website does is predictions up to a week ahead of where the balloons are likely to go. And this is based on weather information from the American National, whatever they call themselves, Weather Service. Unfortunately, this is a dead picture, so I can't click on it and make make things happen. But if you click on the site for the Melbourne airport, it brings up this little message saying you can click on this to get advanced predictions. So I did this earlier this week, and this was the predictions for this week. That's the predictions with the annoying little message removed. You can see the nearest balloon is somewhere south of the Puckapunyal military area, and that's a bit far for me to go and chase. I've set my personal limit at the Bendigo side of the Puckapunyal Army range, partly because I don't want to go into the Army range because they might shoot me, and I was there as part of a green lottery many years ago and didn't like the place at all. But if it's in the bush on this side of the Pucka range, I'll be after it. This is what happens when there's a balloon actually in the air, and you can watch. If we're still here at 9:15 tonight, we can bring this website up and watch things happen until you all go to sleep, because it doesn't happen very fast. The flight takes about 2 hours from beginning to end, maybe 2.5. But you get a picture of, well, nice picture of the balloon, plots on the map where it is, second by second, so you can watch the thing happening. Have I covered everything I wanted to say about that one? Number 11. Yeah. Here's some information on where the data is got from. There's a couple of places you can actually look at the tracking information. One is Mark Jessop's own site, rfhead.net.sons. Unfortunately, it seems to be a little bit seized up at the moment and isn't working too well. But the next one, Tracker, is working perfectly. It gets its data from NOAA in America, which I'm told is the American National and Oceanic Administration. No, I've got it wrong. Well, forget that. Software comes from the Cambridge University, and down the bottom there's pointers to some public domain software that can process the wind data and produce predictions. We don't have to worry about any of that, we just go to the Tracker website and use it. Another site that uses the same data is one that you may have seen on the telly from time to time. The pretty picture on the right is the important thing, showing wind over Australia. I've left the, not quite sure what you call it, all the controls that you can have over the display to show that you can choose whether it's looking at surface winds or winds at various altitudes, other sorts of stuff that I don't understand. But anyway, that site uses the same weather data. Okay, given our predictions and a map that plots where the weather balloon's going, you sit there until the thing's landed and you look at the predictions, and you look at the final predicted landing site. Not good enough to actually go and find the balloon because, well, the one balloon that I have recovered, the prediction was pretty good. It was under 200 metres from where the balloon actually landed. But if it's not well received by any ground station and they lose communications at a fairly high altitude, then it's possible for the predictions to be kilometres off and you'll never find the thing no matter how long you wander around in the bush. Predictions are pretty rough a week out, but by the end of the flight, when you've got the final predicted landing position, it's close enough for you to go out with your own receiver and pick the thing up. Except if it lands down near Sutton Grange in the hills, as happened to me on my first attempt. I knew where it was, well I thought I did, to within half a kilometre. I drove round and up and down, waving my little receiver. I'll pass this round in a minute so you can have a play with it. Waving this around and picked up bugger all. The place was infested with hobby farms with nice friendly signs on the gate saying trespassers will be thrown out on site. The nicest sign I saw was please close the gate. But I didn't know who to go and ask because I didn't know where the balloon actually was. So you need your own receiver. Just to give you an idea of the sort of accuracy of all of this, down the bottom right hand side there is the location of the balloon when SondHub lost data from it. The green dot over on the top right hand side is the predicted landing position. The blue dot is my prediction based on the last signal I got from near home. Notice I was no better than SondHub. And the green-red dot is the position of the balloon that I picked up when we actually drove out there and waved my little receiver around. And that was good enough to find the balloon. I'll tell you how good later. When you get a measurement from the GPS on the balloon, there is some error in it. And I wondered how bad that would be. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching a flight and the balloon got stuck in a tree. I know because a couple of well-known chasers in Melbourne actually sent a message out about this. They said, the gate's locked, there's no one home, and we think it's stuck up in a tree. Which was actually good for me because I watched the plot of the position for well over half an hour, and at most it varied from one side to the other of that circle was 10 metres. So you can expect your average GPS error to be about 5 metres. It's basically good enough that if you get a position when it's on the ground, you can actually blunder into it with your eyes closed. So, tracking options, none. Just search for it. As I've said, you've got a lot of ground to cover. But the radio sonde is busy blabbing its location about once a second, and if you've got a receiver that can pick it up, you're onto it. The popular options are a Raspberry Pi with what's known as RTL dongle. Now, anyone that's played with a Raspberry Pi will know that that's a real computer. It just looks like a small computer, but it's a real computer. It needs a screen of some sort, keyboard, mouse is nice, batteries to run it. I've got a Raspberry Pi. I've got a sort of a dongle. I never quite got round to putting it all together. But I did hear about a little radio module that's flogged by well, I don't know if is AliExpress considered reputable in AliExpress from China? Are they considered reputable? Well, anyway, they're popular. Yeah, there's one of the people that sell through AliExpress are a mob called Liligo, and their stuff is actually good. I've seen various things floating around on the net about using these modules as radio sonde receivers, and there's a couple. One of them is referenced, a couple of options. One's referenced on the SondHub site, and that's the one that I pursued. So I bought one of these modules, and I loaded the appropriate software, and it flashes pretty green lights and puts messages up on the screen. And when it detects a radio sonde, all hell breaks loose. Then that's when it gets to be fun. So that was my option. That's what the module looks like. It's about the size of an old style packet of matches. Posted from China, it's about $35. It comes with a nice little helical antenna that is completely useless because it's tuned to 460 meg and the weather balloon is on 400. Might work if you're up really close, but for any distance you need a better antenna. Okay, this is actually where we have to talk a tiny little bit more about this thing. Because not only does it receive weather balloons, it does Wi-Fi and it also does Bluetooth. This one's programmed just to use Wi-Fi, so when you switch it on, it fires up its own little web server and Wi-Fi access point and puts up a web page. And what you see there is the web page viewed on my phone. It's not quite while I was chasing this balloon, but it's very soon after I lost contact with it, standing on a high hill near home. When you've got a data connection to the internet through your phone as well, you get a live update on the map. So it's quite spectacular software, I reckon. Up the top, you've got all the good oil about the weather balloon. The important stuff being GPS coordinates. But you've also got the height. Can't read the fine print. The speed at which it's going up or down, the speed at which it's going horizontally, the direction it's going, and the date and time, but you already know that, and the received signal strength. I'd say throw the weather balloon away, just get one of these and play with that instead. Okay, this brings me to my particular day of silliness. Well, it's actually a whole week preceded it, where I got excited about a balloon that looked like it was coming up towards Bendigo. So about 3 or 4 days out, that's the prediction. It's somewhere southeast of Axedale. A day or so later, it's a little bit northwest of Axedale, the Mount Sugarloaf Conservation Area. The morning of, actually the third one is part of the way into the flight. So this is a live flight and the website's updating the tracking information and the predicted landing. So about halfway through the flight, it's saying it's going to land in the Mount Sugarloaf Conservation Area, and it's 10 kilometres from where I actually found it. But if we waited till the Sondhub site had lost connection to the balloon, lost signal from it, then we would have had the landing spot nailed down to within about 200 metres. And the last one is the web page that the little detector put up when I was waving it around somewhere near home. So I felt fairly confident to drive out to Axedale, to somewhere near the drag strip, which is to the east of Axedale off the Heathcote Road, and then get vaguely excited about actually going for a walk. You'll recognise this bloke. This is what a radiosonde hunter looks like when he's at his height of madness. Now this picture is actually a bit of a lie, because when I got to that point, it's the high spot near our place, in this side of Maiden Gully. When I got there, the balloon had already landed on the ground, and I got bugger all from it. But I'd been receiving it as we walked there, and I lost it about 200 metres before we got there. But I wanted to climb up to this old trig point and get my photo taken there anyway. So basically just a picture of an old mad bastard. We've seen that one before. The green red dot is where we actually found it when we got there. Anyway, we drove somewhere here. I'm supposed to have a map. When's it going to turn up? Done with that one. Ah, yes. Next. Coming up next, if Microsoft's photo sorting order is the same as Apple's photo sorting order. We parked the car thinking it's about 400 metres, 500 metres out there somewhere. Now, I have to admit at this point being slightly geographically challenged, because I'd spent the morning, or parts of the morning, looking at the tracking website, and they have a lovely satellite view. Instead of getting a map, you can get a satellite picture of the ground, and it showed a creek line with trees and stuff, and I thought, it's near the creek line. This was a bad mistake, as you'll see. Here's a picture of my actual track. Down the bottom right corner is where I turned my little Garmin pocket GPS on and started recording my wanderings. And it gave, and I turned this other jigger on as well, and picked up the radio sonde, and it gave us the landing location. So we thought we knew where we were going. So tear off up the Barnadown Moseley Road, right onto the Axdale-Turleen Road. I'm completely lost at this point. I should know where I'm going because it's my old stamping ground. But I knew there was a farmhouse nearby. I'd spotted that on the aerial view. Right. The important thing about sonde chasing is you should ask, if you're going to trespass on somebody's property, don't. You should ask them first. So we went to the farmhouse. It's quite interesting. There was nobody home. It looked like there should have been somebody home. There were a couple of farm vehicles there. They didn't look like they'd been abandoned, except there was nobody there. The windows were down. I didn't check to see if the keys were in the ignition. I wasn't quite that rude. Knocked on the door, could not raise anyone. The house looked quite unloved. Oh, what do we do? Drive off down the road, round the corner, get to the creek line, bugger it. Rule 1 about not trespassing does not quite apply if you don't get caught. So that's where I set off down along the creek line. As it says there, wandering about aimlessly. I thought I knew where I was going. I had the GPS. I had the coordinates that the balloon had sent. I still couldn't get it right. I overshot the mark. I eventually realised that I've got it wrong, turned around, still going the wrong way. Roughly where the blue arrow was pointing is about where I came to my senses. And then jumped the fence and got away from the creek line that I thought I should have been near, and basically went cross country for a couple hundred metres. When I got there, stood next to the radio sonde landing site and looked at the screen on the GPS, and the error from where the balloon said it was to where I was actually standing, the Garmin claimed it was 1 metre. So I should have been able to find it blindfolded. That's what the landing looks like. That little white dot over on the right-hand side, that's the actual prize. That's what you're looking for. You may not be able to see it, but there's a piece of string, 55 metres, I'm told, by the radio sonde manufacturer. Well, they put it on their data sheet. And at the other end, it's this pile of rubbish. I suppose I should open the present around about this stage. So this is what and the wrapping paper is probably much more valuable than most of the stuff in the box, because most of it I'm going to throw away when I finish the talk. Beg pardon?
Big reveal.
Yeah. Well, I did. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is the title of the talk about presents falling from the sky wasn't original, but once it had entered my brain, there was nothing I could do to get rid of it. So that's the radar reflector. The balloon would normally be up above, but as you can see, when they go bang, it's quite a mess. And every time you pick it up, there's always bits fall off. So this is not as much as what I've found. I've left bits of it at friends' house, where I took it to show them. I've left bits of it in our shed at home, where I stored it for a couple of weeks. If nobody wants it, it's going in the bin. Some people use these. Serious radio sonde hunters build quite a decent Christmas tree out of a pile of these. But here's the thing we're chasing. That's the instrument package. Not quite as I found it because I've had the cover off and I've pulled the batteries out, but that's otherwise what you get. Up the top there's a little quite fragile temperature sensor, apparently accurate to within about, well, most people call them thermometers, accurate to within half a degree over a range of about -60 to about +50 degrees. A relative humidity sensor. Surprisingly, this one survived a fall and being dragged across the paddock and dumped in a gully and possibly been visited by sheep while it was lying there. But they couldn't have done too much damage because I was there only maybe an hour or two after it landed. I've got some pictures of the insides of this too. There, one happy lunatic. Now, why did I get so excited about this? It's got a microprocessor in it, apparently quite a powerful one. They can be reprogrammed. It's got a radio chip that can be retuned to 432 meg. It's all software controlled through I2C. It's got a GPS, all powered by a couple of AA batteries. It's got some voltage regulators, and you can reprogram it and do useful things with it. The ones that people seem to have done, I've listed there, APRS, fox hunting, and it makes quite a nice wireless weather station, because that's what it was made for in the first place. Yeah, it's just a picture of what I've just waved around. Inside it, there's a battery holders, the clear plastic looking thing, microprocessor, GPS, radio transmitter, 60 milliwatts. Oh, pardon me. It's amazing how far you can receive one of those. I've picked one up from over 250 kilometres with that little receiver, 60 milliwatts. That's why I don't run high power at home. You don't need it. 60 milliwatts is plenty. Temperature and humidity sensor on the end. You're welcome to have a look at this afterwards, or I can pass it round. I'm a bit worried I mightn't get it back. Yeah, I'll just go get another one. Yeah. And finally, there's an expansion header on there. You can plug other things into it. There's a JTAG interface in there somewhere, I haven't found that yet, where you can reprogram it. You can't get the software that's in it because it's read protected. People are trying to. So we can reprogram it, which erases everything that's in there, but we can't find out what the manufacturers have put in there. People would like to find out. I don't care. I'll just go get another one. Now, a side effect of this is the little radio receiver board that's in the basically fox hunting tool, the radio finding device, the balloon finding device. The little radio module itself is a great toy. Just over $30-something posted. It's got a really capable processor in it, a lot of memory. Program it with the Arduino programming environment. If any of you have fiddled with Arduinos, you write a language somewhat similar to C. If you've ever programmed in BASIC, you'll be off to a flying start. If you've ever said A equals B plus C, you've got the job half done. So it's easy. No, it's not. They can be reprogrammed. A little bit of programming now does help, but we can always get help from somewhere. The other interesting things in it, because it's an ESP32, it's got built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. That comes with any of the ESP32 processors. It's also got this SX1200 radio transceiver that does FSK, which is what we want for frequency shift keying, which is what we want for receiving the balloon. It does a heap of other stuff, including one that rated a mention at a previous club meeting, LoRa, long range radio. And that is a spread spectrum scheme where you can smear your data over a couple of hundred kilohertz. Would make an interesting talk in itself. But not by me. I haven't figured it out yet. The radio transceiver chip has a 100 milliwatt output and a fairly sensitive receiver down to minus 148 dBm, giving it a link budget of 168 dB. Now, if that means absolute gobbledygook to you, imagine you've got a 100 watt SSB transmitter, somebody receives you somewhere distant in the world at S2, that's the sort of path loss you're talking about. And this is doing it with only 100 milliwatts, not 100 watts. So the combination of LoRa and, the combination of spread spectrum and sensitive receiver is doing an awful lot of hard work. So that's me running out of steam. What am I going to do next? Chase more balloons? Use the radio module in that as a satellite ground station. There's another entire project that you could chase. There are people putting what they call tiny GS ground stations up. $30-something and a turnstile antenna, and you can join that fund. I've bought the radio module. I haven't built the turnstile antenna yet, and I haven't found the time to do it. Once you've got one of those little Illigo modules, I'd say forget about chasing weather balloons, just play with that module instead. You'll have much more fun. And leave all the balloons to me. Thank you. I'm done. Anyone interested in having a look at this, welcome to wave it around, and I'll just check the time because the excitement may not start yet. 8:28. No, we've got another hour. In another hour, there'll be a balloon up in the air, and we could watch the flight as it proceeds, if we wanted to.
We'd be able to track it.
We could track it with this, and we can watch it on Sondhub. Or if you go home, if we finish early and you go home, you can all track it on Sondhub. And have a fight with me when it lands near Bendigo tomorrow sometime.
So you get sucked up by aeroplane?
Haven't heard of that. About the most serious thing I've heard is one of the guys in Melbourne was tracking one, thought he'd got the location, knocked on the door of the house and said, "Excuse me, I'm chasing weather balloons. I wonder if I can grab it." Usually the answer is yes, be my guest, but this time it was no, you're not getting it. It landed on, it's one of these ozone ones, although the owner of the house didn't say it. It landed on my car and damaged it, and I'm going to sue the Weather Bureau. But mostly, on the Sondhub site, you can read notes by people who've recovered these things, and most of them say, friendly landowner, farmer helped me get it. I had a great chat to someone and talked about weather balloons and radio and stuff like that. Most people are quite amenable to you chasing these things.
The programming you mentioned before, so some of the programs they use to reprogram these devices, I guess that the programming coding would be available from different people who've done.
Yeah, I haven't pursued it, but there's pages on GitHub. No, I didn't bring any of that information with me, but I can get it to you. Pages on GitHub where you can look at all of the source code and advice on how to do the programming. And if you go through the Sondhub site, you can find information on what sort of hardware you need to do the programming. I don't know about the actual programming the SONs. I haven't investigated that, so I don't know whether you do that through the Arduino development environment or something else. That's a work in progress, that one.
I was struck by the fact that the
one location, your prediction came up with another location nearby,
Yeah,
and the balloon actually landed
somewhere,
some distance from
yeah.
both of those points. It occurred to me that statistically that bodes very well to narrow down the target
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
But also the question occurs to me, what happens if there's two of you go out with, one of these each, and you should be able to triangulate in on the thing.
Don't need to triangulate, it's blabbing its location as best it knows it. Yeah. I think the difference in the two predictions is the Sondhub one, the balloon was about 1 and a bit kilometres up when they lost it. When I lost it, it was only about 200 metres above the ground. And my prediction was based only on the very last data frame that I got from the balloon, which had the height, the vertical velocity, the horizontal velocity and the direction, and that was the only single measurement that I had to go on.
It's got all those vectors in the transmission.
Yeah, if I can just quickly cycle through the slides without sending people crazy, we'll find one that's got it. Yeah, up there. That little banner at the top there, it's got all of that. The altitude, horizontal velocity, vertical velocity, direction. Is that enough? And throw in signal strength if you want, but that doesn't help you predict where it's landing. Yeah.
A couple of questions from YouTube.
Yeah.
Steve asked, can it be repurposed as an amateur radio balloon?
Yes. The Project Horus mob are doing this a lot. Horus. If you want to look that up. Sondhub is a derivative of the Project Horus site. What they found, I think, was that Project Horus website was getting overloaded with meteorological balloons, so that's when Mark and his friends split it off and got a separate website going.
And one more. Bruce asked the question, how does the Bureau recover the ozone units? Do they chase them or pay a reward for recovery?
$50 reward and they pay postage. At that price, I'd be keeping it if I found one. Purely so I could play with it. I don't know what I'd do with it, but I'd just have it, just for the hell of it. Yeah. Yeah, well that's what that one's been doing for the last couple of months. Just been a prize that sits at home on the shelf. And when I get another one, if I get another one, it'll sit next to it. When I've got about 3 or 4 of them, then I'll start trying to reprogram one.
Because some hands have collected a whole lot of them.
Well, I suspect Peter Freeman, VK3PF, must have about 50 of them, and Glenn 3YY must be fairly close behind. There's a few other active hunters around Melbourne, and Mark 5QI is known to be out. In fact, if I can drive the web browser on this, we could have a look at recent finds over near Adelaide. I have to admit at this point, when it comes to Windows computers, I'm completely useless. So we've got a Windows expert that can actually fire up a web browser. Thanks, Graham.
Not an expert.
You're better than me.
Fire up something.
I've been using Macintosh for so many years that I've no idea how to use a PC.
Here we go.
Okay, so tracker.sondhub.
Okay.
Oh, I could actually type that bit in. Well, once you've got the web browser going, I'm okay. Except if it's Edge. If it's Firefox or Chrome, I'm okay. But if it's any Microsoft software, no, sign of the devil.
There you go. There's
No.
the tracker. You can do the.
I'll just hit enter and see what happens. Okay, England. No, don't like that. Oh, it's actually a nice place, but that's not where we'll find Mark. And I hate trackpads too. I'm an exceptionally grumpy computer user. Am I getting there? I think I know where South Australia is hidden. Oh, that'll do. Okay, these little grey cylinders represent sondes that have been found. So if we click on one of them, recovered by VK5QI, recovered with landowner's assistance. It's a fairly positive one. 5QI, again, easy. 5QI on a bike track. So I think he must have about 50 of them as well. What have we got down around Melbourne? No recent finds around Melbourne. Another interesting thing you can do with this site is you can bring up a list of all the recent recoveries and read the stories that people have put up about them. Sorry, sadly I don't read German, I don't read Polish. Recovered from a fruit orchard. Yeah, you can entertain yourself for hours just poking around here.
That ground station, that tiny ground station project, so what's the aim of that, to actually receive certain satellites?
Yeah, like I think the one that gets a mention often is one called FOSSA, which is an amateur satellite of some sort that runs LoRa.
Right. So just like any other satellites other than amateur, or mainly?
I think they're mostly those tiny little CubeSats.
And then the actual data that you receive from the satellites, is it actually interfacing to a website, or?
I think so. Or maybe there's just kudos to be gained from receiving some packets and punting them off in the internet and making somebody else happy. No, it's not time to chase weather balloons yet. Will be soon. Thank you, folks. Should I pass this little toy around?
Well, that was a bit of fun. Thanks, Phil. That was really interesting. I can smell pies out there. They'll be hot by now. So unless anybody's got a better idea, we might break for supper, and then once we've had supper, we might go outside and chase balloons. What do we think? Yep. Sounds like a plan? Yep. All right. Thanks again, Phil. Okay, that's it for the 23rd of April, or 21st, what is it? 21st of April. From the Bendigo East Hall, Bendigo Amateur Radio and Electronics Club. 73s, everyone. See you next time.